The Iraqi parliament has voted to end the US military presence in the country. Some 5,000 US troops are serving in different regions of Iraq. Washington sent soldiers there more than 4 years ago to help defeat the so-called Islamic State. Now, Baghdad accuses the US of violating its sovereignty by carrying out a drone strike on its soil. The strike killed Iran's top general and an Iraqi militia leader. Well, for more, let's go to journalist Pesha Magid in Baghdad. Pesha, what are the implications of this vote to end this US-led coalition to fight IS?
Well, it's complicated. People are still trying to figure out the legal aspects of the decision. But as of now, it seems like it will be more of a symbolic decision than an immediate expulsion of the 5,000 U.S. troops. The troops are here in Iraq from a 2014 letter sent by the Iraqi government requesting their presence to fight ISIS. And according to the kind of legal agreements of that letter, only the prime minister can expel them. And right now, the current prime minister is an acting prime minister. He resigned from office a few weeks ago following months of protests. So it's in a kind of a in-between legal zone. So at the moment, it seems like it's sending a strong symbolic message, but nothing's going to happen immediately.
All right, so potentially symbolic, at least for the time being. But overall, what would you say that this decision means for the wider region? Who could step into the role that the US has played in Iraq?
I mean, I think quite clearly Iraq is leaning more towards Iran now. For a long time, it was playing a balancing act between U.S. and Iran. But today, we saw in Parliament, there were members of Parliament chanting, "Yes, yes, Soleimani." And, obviously the Prime Minister has stated that, this was a flagrant violation of Iraqi sovereignty, and U.S.-Iraqi relations are, at a lower point than they've been in years.
Where does this leave the fight against IS?
It could, if U.S. troops actually do leave Iraq, it could put Iraq in a much more risky position again. Daesh has been making, ISIS has been making a comeback recently, and U.S. troops played a major role in quelling ISIS and, keeping an eye on their operations. If they leave, it does leave a door open for them to, again, try to make a resurgence.
All right, journalist Pesha Magid putting this decision into perspective for us from Baghdad. Thanks a lot for your analysis. Well, earlier, US President Donald Trump warned that his country will strike, quote, very hard and fast if Iran attacks it. This after Tehran vowed revenge for Friday's US drone strike in Iraq that killed its top military commander. Well, on Sunday, tens of thousands mourned the death of Qasem Soleimani at a funeral in the city of Mashhad.
In the Iranian city of Avaz, a tide of people stretches as far as the eye can see. Mourners paying their respects to their fallen hero, General Qasem Soleimani. Soleimani was the mastermind behind Iran's clandestine military operations in the Middle East and a close ally of Iran's supreme leader. His assassination is considered a declaration of war by many Iranians, both ordinary citizens and those in power. In Tehran, lawmakers chanted "Death to America," and the Iranian parliament speaker condemned the U.S. for committing what he called a big crime.
The savage action of the U.S. president is considered a military act of terrorism. You ought to know that this adventure will have painful consequences for you.
In Washington, the saber-rattling has been just as intense, with U.S. President Donald Trump threatening on Twitter to hit Tehran hard and fast in the event of any Iranian retaliation. If Iran strikes any Americans or American assets, he tweeted, "We have targeted 52 Iranian sites, representing the 52 American hostages taken by Iran many years ago." A reference to the hostage crisis at the American embassy that followed the 1979 Iranian Revolution, a key event in the long-running conflict between Tehran and Washington. The latest developments have many people worried that this historic animosity could lead to war in the present. Americans have staged anti-war protests in several cities.
It's a provocation to war, and it's extremely dangerous, and anybody who wants peace has to stand up and say no at this time.
But the widespread outrage in Iran over Soleimani's assassination may leave the leadership little room to maneuver, putting the country on a collision course with the U.S.
Well, for more on this, let's talk now to DW reporter Chase Winter, who covers the Middle East. Chase, we've been seeing huge crowds turn out for the funeral procession in Iran. How unified is the country behind the regime right now, do you think? Do they want to see retaliation?
Well, Soleimani was very close to the supreme leader and one of the most popular public figures in Iran, according to polls. So the net effect of this is it's created a rally around the flag effect for the regime at a time that it has, suffering under economic turmoil, has had recent protests in which hundreds were killed. The U.S. has essentially created a martyr for Iran and boosted the regime indirectly.
Now, Chase, Trump has warned that the U.S. could hit 52 targets in Iran, harking back to 1979 symbolically. I mean, how seriously are those threats being taken in the region?
I think that the threats need to be taken seriously, but it highlights the danger of an escalation spiral. Trump will, having said that publicly now, will be forced to respond if Iran threatens U.S. interests or military facilities. That in turn will trigger a very strong, robust response from Iran, and you get again an escalation spiral and possibly a regional war. So it's a very dangerous situation.
Well, on that point then, I mean, what do you think other countries in the region are thinking about this spike in tension between the US and Iran? Are they readying themselves for some kind of action?
All countries in the region and the EU, U.S. allies, were basically caught off guard, not informed about this beforehand. They've called for restraint, but at this point, I mean, all sides need to do more than issue boilerplate calls for restraint or concern. The only side that's supported this has been Israel, which was informed about the strike beforehand, and they are also kind of preparing for any backlash from groups in Gaza or Hezbollah in Lebanon or Iranian proxies in Syria in case there's a larger conflagration and Iran chooses to respond there.
All right, DW's Chase Winter, thanks a lot.